special presentation, Donald J. Trump sworn in as the 47th President of the United States of America. In his first words to the world, sending out a strong signal, watch out.
The golden age of America begins right now.
With a ceremony for the history books filled with religion, God and America First attitude, Donald Trump told a nation that's divided that his priority will be to continue the America First agenda. With over 50 executive actions signed to law just hours later, Donald Trump is signaling that his second term is going to be big, bold, and delivering America First. With a new president in one of the superpower nations taking center stage, how will America direct world politics? And will Trump be a catalyst to keeping America up on the top and continue to fight for the underdog? In one of the biggest political comebacks, the world just witnessed a tale of never giving up and fighting till the end.
This is another Derana special presentation, the inauguration of Donald J. Trump. Now, reporting from Studio 24, here's Mahieash Johnney.
A very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our special presentation, the inauguration of Donald J. Trump. Now, this has been a journey which we have been bringing you special presentations after special presentations from the day that he announced that he is going to be running for a second term after a lapse of 4 years. And here we are at the tail end of all things. He is the 47th President of the United States of America. The next 4 years is going to be all Make America Great Again agenda, and that was very clear during his inauguration address, and also that entire ceremony, if you watched it live last night. Lot of pomp and pageantry, regalness, a little bit of change from the usual setting, which was like doing it outside the Capitol building. They were brought in because of weather factors. But the regalness of it all, the transfer of power, the peaceful transfer of power, which they actually boast a lot about, occurred. We saw all the past presidents attending, except a couple of first ladies not being there, but everybody was there, whether it's Democratic or Republican, everyone was there, and in order to celebrate a peaceful transfer of power. The power is now with Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance as the Vice President of the United States. This is the 250th year of their entire democratic process, and here we are talking about the 60th inauguration. Joining me this afternoon is our former Foreign Minister, Dr. Sarath Amunugama. Welcome back to the show. This has been quite a journey, isn't it? We've been talking about him getting shot, and then, the entire inauguration, Biden dropping out, being a roller coaster of a ride, but here we are. Inauguration finally has occurred. Welcome to the show, Doctor. Appreciate you being here as well. And also attorney at law, Udara Soysa. He's a lecturer at the Derana Center for International Studies. Welcome back. Both of you all have been here for this entire journey, and I appreciate you coming here. Looks like this is the final one. Well, there'll be many to talk about Donald Trump's presidency, but this road to the White House ends right here. Now, Donald Trump is inside the White House as the 47th president. Let me start off with you, Dr. Amunugama. What do you think the second term is going to be? Because if you listen to that inaugural address, he was cutthroat. Every single thing he promised during his election campaign, he said, I am going to do that, whether the Democrats agree or not. But now this time around it's going to be easy because he has the House, he has the Senate, and now the presidency as well. All three branches are with him. How do you translate the second term of Donald J. Trump?
Yes, to begin with the inauguration, as to be expected of Trump, it was quite different from the normal presidential inauguration. Firstly, like Reagan before, the whole proceedings were brought indoors, whereas earlier this was out in the open in Washington. And now we can even remember Carter broke tradition and started walking down the streets of Independence Avenue. So he's a breaker of traditions. So first is the location. That was due to various situational factors also. But more than that, this was a different type of inaugural address because it was more, as somebody said, a State of the Union address, where he came out with what he's going to do. So it's very easy in a way for us to be analyzing it. If it was any other president who normally makes very sort of patriotic and very general comments, asking people to cooperate and so on, this was dealing more with specifics. And the whole theme, as you mentioned, was to make America great again. That was the underlying theme. And there are different fundamental differences. One aspect he was emphasizing was American exceptionalism. American exceptionalism as against the earlier democratic and Biden-led and indeed the American tradition of what they called universal values and a value-based international order. So first thing, he distanced himself from that tradition of the American strength earlier of what they call the value-based international order with its emphasis on human rights and so on.
Which is basically the democratic agenda.
Democratic, and which got a boost under Obama and so on. And Biden was almost a faithful follower of that. Then number two, he said that he was looking more towards his own hemisphere. If you look at, for example, what he says about Canada, what he said about Mexico, what he said about Panama, and also by extension a little bit what he said about Greenland. If you plot that on a map, you find that the other hotspots that the world is used to, if you take Ukraine, you take Taiwan, you take the Middle East, those were, I won't say that he neglected it, but they were put a little bit below, I would say, than those other concerns. So that is also an indicator regarding what is going to happen in the future with all the democratic, the senators and congressmen and Biden and vice president, everybody there. He lambasted the handing over of Panama, which was a Carter. It was a Carter initiative to hand over that.
No longer the Panama Canal.
It's no longer American canal, it's a Chinese canal. But typically he linked it not so much to the politics of it, but to the economics of it. He said now China is running this canal, and that is affecting the costs which is borne by the American taxpayer. So what we can expect is one radical. Now radical is a word which normally is used in a different sense, but if you go to the original sense of radical, it is something very different. He will be a radical president.
In his second term.
Yeah, within days now he has signed so many executive orders. Look at the things that he has
Hours,
done.
actually.
Yeah, he has called the National Guard, he's taking
sent to the southern border.
Especially immigration. Now, actually, we in Sri Lanka, we don't understand the force of this immigration issue. It is a vital issue in the United States, and it is also spreading to Europe. To see the number of governments that are tumbling every day, almost there is a government that is changed basically on this immigration issue. So he highlighted basically America first, looking into internal problems like immigration, the trade, competition and things like that. And when it comes to the outer world, he emphasized power. we are not going to, negotiating, but the use of American power, which he displayed in a splendid fashion, because he, within days, somehow made a big change in the Gaza situation. And it was ironic that the last press conference I was watching of Biden, after he gave his big spiel, was saying that he was responsible for this peace, Gaza peace, which he has been negotiating for the last 8 or 9 months, but couldn't get through. The press immediately asked and said, "This is not your business. This is what Trump did," much to his annoyance. So I think within America, he will try to solve those big problems, and outside, he will concentrate more on American power rather than American persuasion.
Udara, I think since you're a legal scholar, there was a very interesting thing that occurred during this entire ceremony. Now, when we are talking about the peaceful transfer of power, they are very much into this traditionalistic way of doing things. You have the presidents coming in, everybody sits, everybody, very cordial. Everybody has a kind way, not the campaign rhetoric style. But then again, the transfer of power has to happen prior to 12 noon on 20th of January after the election year. It didn't happen this time around. This time Trump actually was sworn in at 12:02, but Jerry Vance actually was sworn in prior to that, I think at 11:58. So it's interesting to think about whether does he have to, because I think I don't know whether you remember, Obama had to retake his oath separately because the Chief Justice tumbled on one single sentence during the entire ceremony, and then there was that whole precursor to that saying, okay, we have to take it. We can't have any kind of legal issues coming in and out. In a situation like that, how do you see Trump's second term being played? You've seen this entire drama unfold from day one. How do you see this from that particular perspective?
I think, Mahieash, I think Trump's second term will be pretty much of a consolidated extension of his first terms. So usually when we look at U.S. politics when compared to Sri Lankan politics or any other Asian politics, you see a consistency of policies. If you see from Clinton to Bush to Obama, you see certain differences and discrepancies, but you can see the system, or as Trump would say, swamp, continuing policies in a singular manner that is, by the book. However, when you look at Trump's first term, you see he's challenging the Justice Department. He's challenging everything. As Doctor said, the traditions really doesn't matter to him. Customs doesn't matter to him, and sadly, sometimes law also doesn't matter to him at some situation, as you see. But this is purely the doings of the Democrats. I don't know whether you know of this saying. In Atlanta, we say you play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. And that's ultimately
what happened here in Sri Lanka too.
What happened? What happened? Because I think the insane focus on liberalization of just thrusting it down the throat of normal conservative Americans. And we have to understand, America is not a liberal country like in Canada.
I was very curious when they were always talking about, whenever the speech started, our founding fathers, this document, and I don't know whether there were shots of it, Doctor, when they were doing the whole speeches and all, there was a declaration, the signing of the declaration in that entire rotunda, which was displayed very well. And they're so loyal to that document, which was written 250 years ago. And they don't keep changing, but what they do is freedom of speech, free to bear arms, all these kinds of things.
The amendments.
Yes, exactly. They are so loyal to that document, and they say it is the Constitution, but it is a declaration of certain rules and regulations, not per se like what we have here in Sri Lanka. And we go on, I think now the 23rd or the 24th Amendment to the Constitution, and we talk about changing the Constitution. Is that the reason that America has been so successful, in your opinion, that following that same tradition, despite the fact that whether there's a Republican president, Democratic president, that document basically sets the path of where America is going, even after 200 years?
Not necessarily. If you look at the amendments, right? For example, you had like certain amendments, like I think the 19th Amendment, which gave the rights for women to vote. So the amendments, they've been adding on. But the key amendments, like the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the freedom of speech, and those key amendments are the basic pillars and the normal, like the bread and butter of the legal system that you see. Now, for example, Obama tried, Doctor, so much to take the guns away after all these school shooting fiasco, but it will never happen. Even the presidency has certainly missed. But what I see the reason in terms of the U.S. success is, I think, the mindset, the culture, the systems, and the fact that how the dollar controls everything ultimately. But I do understand what you said about consistency, where the foundations of U.S. democracy is, though it's 250 years, it's still, they stick to the roots. Under any given circumstance, whether you have a school shooting or whatever happens, you stick to it. And you see that certain democratic policies have infringed on First Amendment, and as you see, the Trump has addressed that as well. Like now, for example, I cannot use certain words because you'll be offended, right? And so I mean,
taken out.
Yeah. So ultimately, you can see the fact that federal government directly, making very sensible decisions. Not having like 5,000 genders, for example. So things that make sense to a common person has not made sense to the Democrats, and ultimately they have results.
That is very valuable. I want to get the doctor's take on that as well. But before that, when did you come into politics, Doctor?
1992, 93.
So that is Bill Clinton's time.
Yes.
So you've been there when Bill Clinton you've been in government, and
I've known Bill Clinton personally.
Exactly. And then George W. Bush, Barack Obama, Trump, and of course Biden. You might know Biden during the vice president presidency time, and you have been in those situations. How do you enter, like from the time that America, I think in the 90s onwards, since the renaissance of technological surge and all that advancements that they made, what can we learn? Because our foreign policy keeps changing all the time. We don't know right now, to be honest, what is our foreign policy is, because this government has said, okay, we're going to do the same thing which we've been doing for quite some time. But here, in a situation where we always have said non-aligned is what will work for us, how do you see that entire, from that particular point onwards up until now, the changes that Sri Lanka has gone through, and yet the changes America has gone through, and what can we learn from that?
Before I come to that, shall I come to that earlier question?
Of course.
Because that is the nature of American federalism. Because the American Federation came after individual states got together. It was not that the center then devolved into a federal state. So when the states came into that confederation, they had certain inalienable rights. For example, they said that the Constitution is vital. That was a precondition of the American Federation, because these were individual units that voluntarily came together to form the United States of America. That is the meaning of U.S.A. Then, most of the changes in the American Constitution comes by way of interpretation by the Supreme Court. Now, for example, the rules regarding separate but equal, Now, the Supreme Court interpreted an existing section of the American Constitution saying that you cannot say separate and equal, because as we saw yesterday,
Board of Education.
that all are equal in the eyes of God. So basically the constitution is very strong. Now in Sri Lanka, unfortunately, that's one of the biggest problems, is that the constitution is amenable to change very easily. And actually, one good thing is that the Supreme Court in its interpretations of the constitution have tended to look at the more rational sides of it. We have had, absurd situations. For example, when Mahinda Rajapaksa wanted a third term, which was against the whole spirit of the constitution, still it was done through a constitutional amendment. Then we had situations where non-citizens were able to hold office. So things like that, which is sort of inconceivable in the American context, because the three pillars, the legislature, the executive and the judiciary, they all very jealously guard their rights and their functions. So that's that question. When it comes to foreign policy, what we have to see is that the foreign policy of the U.S., as we can see now, is largely determined by their national interests. America is a divided country. On one side, you have this liberal tradition, the human rights tradition, the civil rights movement, and a whole history of that, which is traditionally associated with the Democratic Party. I mean, in a sense, because in each party in America there are so many wings which have different, almost contrary views within the same tent. So that is that. But on the other hand, as Udara said, America is a country of roughnecks in a way. Large number of people are very concerned. Now yesterday when you saw the that inauguration ceremony, the crowds that Trump had brought in, they were not at all bothered about the solemnity of the situation or the historic value of the city, nothing like that. They started cheering, and some even started shouting 4 more years. So there is this duality in the American
is that beneficial? Because amidst the ethnicity differences, there are so much of ethnicities in America.
Yeah.
Yet, when it comes to the political stream, there is the duality of it. Either Republican or Democrat. Yes, you can run as an independent candidate, but you never get garner the support the way those two main parties are going through. We had that system for quite some time, and then it started breaking apart. Is that has been a curse to Sri Lanka? Or has that worked well for Sri Lanka? Because in my opinion, Doctor, is like it actually started when we had the duality system, we had everybody in one party, whether it's a Tamil, whether it's a Muslim, it doesn't matter where you come from.
Yeah.
If you believe in this ideology, you're there in that. So
well, that is one lesson we can learn, because in America, you're inside that tent. The Democratic Party and the Republican Party are two big tents. Inside that, all sorts of characters can be together. And even in the voting, for example, that we can see the Senate and in the Congress, depending on the issue, people cross lines. I may come in as a Democratic senator or Democratic candidate, a Democratic congressman, but on an issue that affects my voters or my state, I will cross lines and vote with the other side. And that is what now I was reading the latest Economist, which came out yesterday, which is featuring Trump. They say that the only hope for Democratic Party and that type of intellectual is that there is enough Republicans to cross the line and deter Trump from doing some of those extreme things, because within the Republican Party there are some people who are more, within quotes, democratic than Trump.
The Republican Party, as we knew, those days is no longer in existence with the Make America Great Again agenda coming in. Udara, I wanted to get your reaction to that as well, but before that we want to take a short commercial break. This is our special presentation, the inauguration of Donald J. Trump, the 47th president of the 7th and the 45th president of the United States of America. You're watching our special presentation. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to our special presentation, the inauguration of Donald J. Trump. I'm in conversation with our former Foreign Minister, Dr. Sarath Amunugama, and also from the Bandaranaike Institute for International Studies, our lecturer, Udara, Soysa, attorney at law as well. Udara, I want to start off with you. With regard to this entire unprecedented event that occurred, what we witnessed last night, from the location of that entire swearing-in ceremony to what happened, and the unprecedented number of executive orders that was carried out. Now, this, how does that work? Because when the president says and sign those executive orders, does that become law, or is there a process that it needs to go through?
No, in terms of now, you can see when it comes to the U.S. legal system, the president has been offered certain limited legislative functions to address any issues of national interest through executive orders, right? So now, traditionally, this has not been used over the years, right? But you can see, certain presidents using these executive orders a lot more recently, from the time, I would say, from Obama onwards. And if you look at Mahieash, most of these executive orders were targeted at cancelling the existing executive orders ordered by Biden, because this was one of the campaign promises as well. And
all were wiped off.
Yes, and I think ultimately I think one of the objectives and the hopes of Trump is more or less to eradicate any legacy that Biden was hoping to keep, for sure. And I think.
But is that law now?
Yes,
once it's signed.
Once it's signed, the executive order functions as an executive order. So the legal validity of the
is there an equivalent here in Sri Lanka to that effect? No.
In my perhaps through emergency regulation, etc. But if you look at the U.S. system, you have to understand, this is a separate system. Like you cannot compare it in any way at any sort with Sri Lankan system, because there is strict separation of power. There is a bi-chamberal structure with House and the Senate, and President has been given certain powers for his functionalism, and you have a very strong Supreme Court, but now controlled by the conservative majority. But I think you should look at it in a quite simple manner. So there were key policies that the Biden administration and the Democrats cohorts have imposed on the federal government, and the objective of Trump was to completely free the federal government from those holes, and this is what his base wanted, Mahieash. Trump. I think Trump will be more successful than any president here in Sri Lanka, because he worked with his base. He knows his base is loyal. I think one time Trump said, if I go and kill somebody, my base will still vote for me. So he has a very strong base, and as a business person, as a man of lot of business wisdom and acumen, I think he is catering it from the day one, because if he try to balance different demographies to keep everybody happy, I think it will be a mess. And I think you have seen, history has shown it over and over in many other countries, including in ours.
He did deliver from day one. I think not day one. I think from the first hour onwards, he was delivering it. He didn't apparently say, "I'm not a magician" or that sort. But Doctor, give us this perspective into understanding Biden per se and the Democratic Party. Udara was talking about Biden's legacy. What is Biden's legacy now?
Actually, when you look at Biden, you have to separate his foreign policy from his domestic policy. His foreign policy was an utter failure, because he didn't even represent the best of what I would call Democratic Party thinking. He was a captive of a small group, people like Blinken and Jake Sullivan and a group which had a different view of international affairs. So that put them into a big mess in the Middle East, in Ukraine, even in Taiwan, where it is unresolved, problems of South China Sea. Wherever they intervened, it was a failure. But Biden, at the last moment, he said, well, at least I didn't have trouble with China. In his, valedictory address, he said, we managed to have some relationship with China. But having said that, we must not forget that his internal program, his domestic program, was very progressive. In fact, he extended the Obama legacy. And he did a lot for the working classes, Also, for example, he took away many of the defects in where people could work, could study and then pay later. This scholarship, American educational scholarship programs, a lot of progressive things that he did domestically. But finally, he was engulfed by his failures in the foreign sphere. So I think history will not be kind to him. History will not be kind to him. And because of that, you find that the gulf between him and Trump is very large. There was though, as we mentioned, there was a peaceful transfer. It was also an acrimonious transfer. For example, he was harping on the fact, Trump was harping on the fact of the weaponization of the judiciary. Now, this is something that we should all remember, because he feels aggrieved. He thinks that Biden personally and the Democratic Party used the legal system to put him into trouble. So that was all brought under this rubric of weaponization of judiciary and the law. And he went on talking about that, much to the embarrassment of Biden. So there is, I think, a certain amount of personal animus, the feeling that things were stacked against him. That also, I think, added to his need to do away with this at the earliest possible moment.
Udara, Donald J. Trump is, I think, around 77 years old, and by the time he leaves office, in 4 years' time, he's going to be the oldest president of the United States since that entire union came together. Kamala Harris, a young version, a woman, a person who is vibrant enough to rally the support of the youngsters, the ones who were the driving force. But if you look at in this election, that young crowd was with Donald Trump, with the old gentleman who is basically, now I think there'll be even more support with Trump saving TikTok and actually making a deal out of that. So you see that Kamala Harris, being a woman, being an African American, Indian American, so much of vibrancy which the Democratic Party exactly stands for, that is the image of the Democratic Party, couldn't even make a dent in Trump's victory, or at least bring it to a close call point where you can actually say, okay, I lost within a few points. Even the popular vote goes to this individual who was claimed to be hate. And they said so much of things, nothing worked. Why do you think is that? Because is the Democratic Party done in its sense how it was prior?
I think, let me tell you, Mahieash, when the exact point where Kamala Harris lost the election, I think in one of the interviews, the announcer clearly asked Kamala Harris, okay, if you were the president, not Biden, would you have done anything better, different than
that host was Sunny Hostin,
right,
from The View, one of the most liberal shows.
Extreme liberal.
Extreme liberal.
Ultimately, she couldn't answer. So you have to understand the fact that American voters do not see Kamala Harris as Kamala Harris, a young female, energetic. They saw Kamala Harris as a extension of total detrimental extension of Biden. So that was Biden version 2. So she did not have anything to offer, anything new. So ultimately, unless you are an extreme die-hard woke liberal supporter, in your mind it is very difficult to gather up, like, why should I vote for another several years of this economic catastrophe. So I think that's, and a lot of Democratic voters are now so delusioned by.
So in your opinion, where can the Democratic Party go from here? Because
I think
Hakeem Jeffries is there, but doesn't look like a strong leader. Nancy Pelosi is done age-wise, and you look at Kamala Harris. Apparently, doesn't look like she will be given the chance to come back and actually portray again. That Democratic Party, basically Joe Biden, who came to eradicate Trump and the MAGA movement, basically gave way to another term of Trump.
Stronger version, stronger term. Right? So you have to understand the American politics in a spectrum. So you have the left to this side and right to this side. So in modern times, I'm not talking about the times of Abraham Lincoln where the Republicans are a bit more liberal. So if you look from the last 50 years, you see that the Democrats are mostly from the left to the middle, and then you go from middle to the right, the Republicans. So now what you see is, especially when it comes to the Democratic Party, is a bit of a polarization towards far left, right, where moderate policies and moderate politicians are sidelined, where a limited number of people with certain agendas coming into the spray and controlling the narrative, which might not resonate even with the traditional registered Democrats. Now, I lived half of my life in U.S. and part of my life I live in Atlanta, and I was on the view Georgia, right? So I was in the view that after the last 2020 election, that these areas are being transformed. But I know a lot of registered Democrats now shifted in this election to vote for Trump. So now there's an existentialist crisis which is churning out in the heart and the core of the Democratic Party.
That is the immigration issue.
Yes.
That is turning the political system topsy-turvy.
I want to get your take on that, Doctor. Now, you see America, the United States of America, now going with a conservative president. Up there in the north, Pierre Poilievre, the opposition leader, the extreme liberal Trudeau is done. Okay, and that is also because he went and visited Donald J. Trump, and he just sent out one tweet, he's done. And Pierre Poilievre is becoming a very, very attractive individual for the Canadians, where Canada is extremely liberal in some sense. Europe, same thing. We see in France, you saw Marine Le Pen, her party with the majority, despite the fact that she couldn't form a government, but still they are in the majority in that house. So you see in these certain countries, conservatism is making a comeback in terms of understanding these values as in those particular countries are more important to those individuals rather than these progressive ideas. Is that a shift that is occurring because of Trump, or was this anyway bound to happen?
No, there's one factor that we in Sri Lanka, indeed many people in Asia, they cannot understand the trauma caused to the American and European body politic by this unfettered immigration. Basically, the culture of America and the West is really a white Christian culture.
Yeah.
It has changed. I mean, there's been a lot of transit, a lot of accommodation, but that core civilization problems were shocked, were traumatized by this migration. Even a big part of Trump's inaugural address was about that.
Yeah.
Saying murderers are coming, rapists are coming. No, not the type of language that normally a president would use in an inaugural address. Then he said, I'm going to sign this, I'm going to get the National Guard, I'm going to do this, then I'm going to be tough with Mexico. A whole series of things. Now, can you imagine an American president who in his very first speech is challenging Canada. Now you can see the Canadian political establishment, they are horrified because this is not the sort of language that they are ever used to. You can't say I'm going to take over another country like that. Then, for the West. Now, Greenland, for example, is today under the management of Denmark. So saying that we will buy up Greenland. Then he mentioned that, well, we will stop calling this the Gulf of Mexico, it will be the Gulf of America. Then he talked about Panama. So the whole, he's really talking about this traumatized Western people, the Western culture, which cannot make an easy transition from their traditional culture and civilization to this more, shall we say, racial, more poor,
more integrated
type of thing. Now, we sometimes like it. We think, well, basically we are for that. But if you put yourself in the shoes of an American, thinking we are first generation or we are fifth generation, we fought in the Second World War, we did this, we built up these churches, we were of the Baptist persuasion, all sorts of things, whole history, whole culture. I mean, they're scared. They're traumatized.
There's a fact, Doctor, here. Now, if you look at America, America is a hodgepodge of a lot of nationalities coming together. This is basically the American dream that they are always talking about. Now, if you take Georgia, you said it's African-American majority. Up there in Michigan, it is a Muslim majority. And the liberal side of things happen in California, an area. You take
some parts of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pennsylvania. And all those areas which are being basically dominated by another ethnicity around the world, said it's Trump. Michigan said, a battleground state said it's Trump. Another battleground state, Pennsylvania, said it's Trump. All these nationalities within those particular states are saying, I'm sorry, yes, we understand there is, all these guys wants to come here, but come legally. They too seconded Trump's way of saying that, we are not against immigration, we are against illegal immigration. This is pouring over the border. In a situation like that, what is America's future? Because it was more predominantly white, majority was white, and now white is becoming a minority there.
I'm a sociologist. So there was earlier this notion of the melting pot, David Reisman and people like that talked of America as a melting pot. But in the melting pot were white people from Hungary, maybe migrants, maybe Poland, various groups. Israel. Then also the people who came after, the Soviet Union collapse, all that. So they are quite comfortable with those guys. Now, if you go to, for example, certain parts, Minnesota, for example, they're all Scandinavians.
Sweden, Norway, Denmark.
From there. So that is one, but this is a different kettle of fish. And as you rightly said, Mahieash, even the old migrants, even if they were black or people came from Mexico and from Latin America, even they were resentful of this uncontrolled migration. That was something that they could not tolerate, because when you see what is going on, it will shock anybody. It shocks even us. So this idea of the old melting pot is different from what is going to happen in the American situation.
Indeed, I'm in conversation with Dr. Sarath Amunugama, our former foreign minister and also lecturer at the Bandaranaike Institute for International Studies, attorney at law, Udara, Soysa. We are analyzing the inauguration of the 47th and the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. He is now in power. He's Make America Great Again factors are now sweeping all across America, and seems like it might sweep in towards North America too, in case Pierre Poilievre makes a victory there. A lot of conservatism going all around the world. Let's take a short commercial break. You're watching our special presentation. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to our special presentation, the inauguration of Donald J. Trump, the 47th President of the United States of America. I'm in a conversation with our former Foreign Minister, Dr. Sarath, of course, a lecturer at the Bandaranaike Institute for International Studies, Bandaranaike Center for International Studies. I keep messing that up. Udara, Soysa, Hitler. We've been talking a lot about how Trump transition and the changes that we see America occurring. Let's come to this part of the world, India, Udara, our closest neighbor, China, another key economic partnership. Two places where our president first visited as soon as he was sworn in as our president a couple of months back. And Modi has a really good friendship with Donald Trump. India, United States might actually see better relations going through. And of course, Trump is also willing to meet with Xi Jinping. And he wants to speak to Putin. All these parts of the world, he is now more or less not talking about rhetoric, but better business deals. So how do you see these three countries relations-wise?
I think you have to understand in politics, there's one school of thought of pragmatism, where other school of thought when we focus on ideology. So one of the issues I've seen with the Democratic Party and the Democratic presidency under both Obama and to a great scale with Biden is the fact that ideology played it should play a role, but it played a role than necessary, and this has seeped in through our embassies and wherever, because as you know, most of these officers are very liberal, from liberal universities, right? So this, in the other hand, the pragmatism where it comes to people like Trump, they see everything as a deal, whether it's a ban on TikTok to anything. So I think these two aspects have to be understood. So the relationship between these countries will not be solely governed by the liberal ideological expectations, but rather practical realities that will ultimately bounce to be of the best interest of Americans, right? So that's where I think Trump is hoping for less ideology, less focusing on liberalization of those countries in terms of political system, or maybe less regime changes, less underhand mechanisms, but more developing policies and trade deals and tariffs systems that would benefit the U.S. manufacturers, U.S. consumers, and U.S. production. So in that sense, I think I wouldn't think this would be a extremely rosy connection, especially with the tariff wars that I think may take place in the second term. But ideologically, I think they will manage.
Doctor, in terms of relations with India, one of the things that we really need to understand is this budding relationship between these two leaders. They love each other, to be honest. But in a scenario like that, and we trade wars with China, because China seems to be the key country that Donald Trump wants to attack and to make sure that they do not succeed in economically. They try to bring certain amount of businesses out from China and put into India, because there is also the conflict between India and China. So in a situation like that, how can we harness this? Because if you look at organizations like now Elon Musk's Tesla or Starlink. Now Starlink is supposed to come to Sri Lanka. I've already registered, but I'm still waiting for when they are starting, so no idea about that. But in a situation like that, Apple, another good example. All Apple products are made in China. Donald Trump wants them, out of China and maybe into America or some other country. India seems to be the best place that Donald Trump would like certain businesses to go. How can we tap into that? Not to bring everything here, but actually utilize that particular relationship between India and the US and tell our neighbor, hey, help us out a little bit too.
Well, the very first thing is that we must have clarity of thought. We need to think these things through properly. What is the real situation? Today in America, you can be a Republican, you can be a Democrat. They all feel that the coming contest will be between the US and China. Whether it ends into a fighting war, a world war, or whether it could be settled with a deal, that is a different matter.
But there is a trend.
But they think that it is going to be a war. Their rival is China. So all their other analyses, their other activities, particularly in our theatre, is dominated by this basic factor. The second factor is that even India is now growing into, particularly under the Modi regime, coming into a situation where they feel that they are going to be a rival of China. So China is becoming the touchstone of activity both of the US and of India. Now in this situation, which is a fraught situation, how should we operate? That is the question which needs a lot of clarity, a lot of thought and a lot of strategy. Because one thing about Trump is that he doesn't want to go into a shooting war. The trouble with the Democrats was that they were not strong enough to resist this hawkish, the military, the administration. And ironically, the last speech made by Biden is talking about a military industrial complex. He says that there is a fear of America being taken over by an oligopoly. That's what he said in his last speech. So there is this big problem in the sense that there will be a churning of these relationships with America first. So America first, and where the preference of Trump will be to do a deal. And to do a deal, he has to strengthen his cards. He has to get the better cards into his hand. If you are going to have a card game with China, he has to have the better cards into his hand. That is what he is now trying to do.
Let me ask this question. 2015 to 2019, the good governance government botched relationships with Donald Trump. Didn't actually harness anything out of it. Second time around, here we have completely a new government, a new president, completely a new way of governing as well. How can this government harness that? Because right now, whatever said and done, as much as I am anti-American, but you have to understand the fact that the three key players, China, India, and the United States, is a balancing act from foreign minister. And that balancing act has to be done meticulously planned. So how can we get Trump on board in a manner where we can benefit out of his presidency?
So that is the concept of the end of ideology. There is a school of thought, and that will be bolstered by not only Trump but by all the developments in the Western world, which says now this value, so-called value-based, which is blatantly not true, saying that these Western values should prevail, that those values are universal values, that thinking is, I think, out of the window.
Yeah.
So Trump is coming at a time when he's talking of the deal, what is in your interest, what is in our interest, not ideology. So in a way, if we position ourselves properly, we can enter into a dialogue. And where can we position ourselves? It is our strategic location, nothing else. All that other talk is just nonsense. When you think of a global scale, I mean, there are other little things like manpower, this, that, and the culture and all that. But in a specific number one case, it is our geographical position. So how do we leverage that in a highly volatile situation? That is the question. There's the U.S., there's India, there's China, and we find Sri Lanka playing a significant role if we can play our cards properly. And there's no reason why all three cannot feel that they can have a deal with Sri Lanka, can get on with Sri Lanka. I don't see any reason why we should try to climb onto one particular bandwagon and then bring onto our heads all the other problems that will be following an international contest.
Yeah.
So that we have to convert to our advantage. Take China, take Vietnam. Those are countries, if they wanted, they would have been absolutely hostile to the West. No? Yeah. Their society was destroyed, their people were killed, more bombs were dropped onto Vietnam than in the whole of the Second World War. But still they are willing to have a deal. They are still willing to talk and have a way that is best for their people. That is what we should do.
Before we go in for a break, former Foreign Minister, now, yes, deal is absolutely vital, but we have to get to the inner circles of Washington. We have to have key people strategically located in those embassies in order to make sure that they can get to these key individuals and actually have those dialogue face to face rather than going through this and that. That's one avenue. The second avenue is asking India, help us out. How would you advise on that?
No, certainly our relationship with India is a special relationship. As somebody said, both history and geography determines our relationship with India. So I don't think we can get a situation where we are going to fight India. That is a very stupid type of thought, But that does not mean that we should fight with all of India's enemies, As once it was mentioned by Mandela, why should the world think that their enemies are our enemies? So we can carve out our own thing, but with consideration, with considerable help from India and China. I think the way we are doing it properly at present is okay. We are talking to India, we are talking to China, and talking with a good heart, not with the idea of using one against the other. So I think we are on the correct track. We have to stick to that. We have our authenticity, but we can be good friends to India as well as China. There is no contradiction.
Let's take a short commercial break. This is our special presentation, the inauguration of Donald J. Trump, the 47th and the 45th President of the United States of America. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to our special presentation, the inauguration of Donald J. Trump, the 47th President of the United States. Final few minutes of our special presentation. Udara, I'll get to you. How can we harness this the non-existing relationship with Donald Trump? We didn't have one during the 2015 and the 2019 regime. I think the only time Donald Trump mentioned Sri Lanka was when the Easter attack. He tweeted saying, I think that's the only time he actually spoke about Sri Lanka. And there were a lot of efforts by, I think, the then government in order to reach into America, but didn't happen. But this time around with Elon Musk, we have lots of past presidents who actually have that knowledge in order to get maybe like a council of presidents or whatever, in order to get this, because this notion of, like what Doctor said, pitching one against the other is not going to work for us. We're a small nation. We have to make sure that our people, the 22 million people who have been suffering for a very longer period of time, really need relief. And in order to do that, the only way we can do it is better trade deals. Better trade deals that works well for us, not just for that incoming party. How, in your opinion, how can we get that?
I think giving our foreign service very clear mandates and clear goals, to reach out to, and then at very high level, presidential level, make whatever the efforts needed. But our success would depend on presenting our country as an opportunity than a beggar with a begging bowl. So Donald Trump is not a man of charity, he's a man of business. So we have to approach we have to go and approach in a manner that this will be mutually beneficial for perhaps his political interest, his business interest, and of course on the top of the interest of U.S. So a lot of acumen, lot of intellect is needed for that. I'm not really sure we possess that at the moment, but I do see this as a great opportunity to forget the ideological differences and forget any
left and right kind of polarizing
mind frame, and to target and hit this with a business perspectives. Okay, you do this, this is what you'll get. This is what I think we need to present as.
Doctor, final few minutes. Perhaps a Trump hotel sounds good this time around here in Sri Lanka. I mean, come on.
I think it's very clear because he wants to challenge China.
Yeah.
To challenge China, in his mind, their economic dominance must be reduced. And to do that, some of those things that they produce in China must be moved away from there. Very unlikely that all of it will go back to the States like TikTok, but other areas we have a very splendid opportunity to see the overflow from there, to see what we can get from this type of policy shifts that are happening. We should take that opportunity.
And Doctor, I may add something. I think a great area for is area like ceramics.
Yeah.
You see that anti-dumping measures have been put for countries like India, China, but the problem. Our government allows all these other countries to we don't have clear policies. If we can have policies where we are able to support our manufacturers in a way that they can produce and do sales to U.S. where they are now starting these tariffs against Chinese tiles and Indian tiles,
60% tariff for China.
So this is we have a good ceramic industry, and we are the government is allowing not actually securing the industry. And
to be honest, Doctor, in order to do that, we have to get our act together.
Of course.
For sure.
We have not been getting our act together for the past donkeys years.
If I may add that, you're quite right. Now, for example, look at our garment industry. What happened? There was oversupply in China, Hong Kong. Then what happened was the West started quotas. Then we got a quota and we didn't have an industry. Yeah. Because we had the quota, the garment industry came here. Not that the beginnings of the garment industry was that we held a quota. So the overflow from Hong Kong, from China came over here. Yeah. So similarly, I think we have to negotiate. Whatever is coming out as a result of all these deals and conflicts and regulations, there will be a spillover. India is fully geared to take over that spillover. If you study what has happened in India during the last couple of months, they have been receiving those. We are not receiving it. I recently looked at the garment figures, for example, there has been a drop in production. So we have to look at probably that is being shifted to India, I don't know. So we have to really take a serious look at it and analyze how the outflow that will result from these Trump's policies in Asia and other places can come into our economy.
We must be ready as a country to utilize and
we have to have an image as
sure.
a country that is open for investment. But if we are having these rules and regulations, and it's a country that is full of bribery and corruption and inefficiency, for which we have got a label now, if that can be removed
and to support our industries,
exactly, then we have a good future.
Gentlemen, we are running out of time. Dr. Sarath Amunugama, a former foreign minister and also a lecturer at the Derana Center for International Studies, attorney at law, Udara. Soysa, thank you very much. We got to wrap it up. Of course, we will continue this conversation in the next 4 years itself. It'll be interesting to see how Trump would be governing America and also putting himself out there in the world. The news from America is there is a new sheriff in town. It's actually a new, not a new sheriff, it was the old one. He came back, he got his position back. Donald J. Trump and J.D. Vance are now the president and the vice president of the United States of America. With that, we're going to wrap up our special presentation. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a good afternoon.